You are a nightly guest here as we continue to try to figure out what's happening in terms of an update. So since we spoke about 24 hours ago, what changed, Elliotte?
Well, I think that the league and the players just decided that they weren't going to be able to make any kind of changes to their agreement on the finances. The players had a certain request, and if they were going to, they weren't willing to talk about escrow. They were willing to talk about deferment. They made some asks. One of them was, could they raise the salary cap $500,000 next year and $500,000 the year after, just to take it a little bit higher and give a bit more room and put some money in the system for some small signings. The league wasn't willing to do that, and I think they just felt they weren't going to be able to go anywhere. So they said, look, let's keep this the way it is, and let's work on the rest of everything else, how the protocols, how it's going to work, when we're going to start. Are we going to play in our home rinks, or are we going to need some brief hubs? How is the taxi squads going to look? Things like that. Let's work on some of the other stuff. Player opt-outs, if there are going to be any. And I think they really want to get this done by towards the end of this week, beginning of next week, because if we are going to start January 13th, and as you said, Jamie, that's the target date, but no guarantee, we have to get moving.
They do have to get moving. You just dropped a laundry list, Elliotte, of things that they're going to be working through. If you had to prioritize either by importance or difficulty, what are the first things that come to mind?
Well, I think the toughest, that's a good question, Mike, in the sense that, I think they know how many games they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think they know when they want to start.
Mm-hmm.
I think they kind of know how they want to work out the rosters in terms of taxi squad size. One of the things is, how are you going to pay them? Like, one thing I've heard is that they'll be on AHL salaries, but NHL per diems. Like, will that count against the cap? That kind of a thing. Is there going to be a COVID injury list? Things like that. Are you going to be forced to carry 3 goaltenders? I think that's very possible. But I just think the biggest challenge, Mike, is preparing for the unknown.
Right.
Until we heard from the province of Manitoba today, we weren't sure that the Jets were going to be able to have training camp in Winnipeg. We still don't know about Montreal. They're worried about California and San Jose in particular. What's going to change between now and then? So I think the biggest challenges, Mike, are preparing for the unknown. I'll tell you this, Mike. There's a Board of Governors call on Wednesday afternoon. At times, I have heard through this that some owners really don't like the idea of playing without fans. Mm-hmm. And when the reports came out last night that they were going to leave the economics alone, I had some guys today who work for teams who said they still didn't believe me 100% on that. So, if there's any serious ownership pushback, we'll probably have a better idea tomorrow.
Elliotte, to be clear, the Board of Governors have to vote 2/3 in favor for it to pass. Is that correct?
That's right. So it's 21 of 31 have to agree.
So there is room for some dissent.
Yes. Now the vote is not tomorrow.
No.
I should clarify that. You have to come up with a deal and then send it. The players will vote on it, and the Board of Governors would vote on it.
And Elliotte, when you talked about all the unknowns, and it's almost impossible that they could answer every possible thing that could come up because 2020, 2021, things have come up. So will they just be building in flexibility to answer those questions later while trying to answer as many they can think of now?
I got to tell you, when I was a university student, Mike, they said to me that your best skills in life are going to be flexibility and adaptability. Right. And nowhere have they been proven to be more true than that. I've had people say to me today, there's no way we're going to start January 13th. It's not going to be possible. And I said, you might be proven to be right, but that doesn't mean you don't plan for it and say, well, if we can, here's what we're going to do. And that's basically what we are. You're trying to prepare for every possible thing that you can think of. And that's why there's a temporary hub plan and a play at your own building plan.
Right.
It's all that, that's why I think they're building a schedule with a week or two between the end of the regular season and the playoffs. So if you have to make up games, you're going to have the ability to make up games. I think they're working on all of that stuff, like the taxi squad, things like that. All of that is being worked on.
And let's not fool ourselves. I mean, this is something the NHL has been thinking about, and the Players Association has been thinking about and trying to plan for scenario A, B, C through Z, probably since we stopped the playoffs back in the end of September. So they've had time. It's not like they're just starting right now to get to the drawing board and figure out solutions to any of these questions. But now that we have a date, again, a target date that seems possible 5 weeks from tomorrow, January 13th. How does that affect any movement on the free agent market?
Well, I think we're going to start seeing some things. Like guys were telling me today that business was picking up. Now that we look like we have a potential plan here, I think teams were starting to call players and say, all right, what are you thinking? We had a deal announced tonight. Philadelphia re-signed Philip Myers. But I think also certain guys who aren't signed yet, especially the unrestricted free agents, guys like Michael Granlund, guys like Mike Hoffman, guys like Eric Holla, I think you're going to see conversations on those kinds of decisions pick up because, as someone said to me today, if you're a player who's switching markets, and all of those guys probably are, if you have kids and they're coming over
That's
with
right.
you, like where are you going to school? Don't you want to get here as quickly as possible? And the other thing now is that if you're taking a kid to a new place to go to school, you can probably do it for Christmas break, maybe meet some people at the school if it's possible, and then start right after early in January. So I think for some of these players, there's a bit of sense of urgency, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see some guys making their decisions in the next few days.
Okay, a lot of logistics to figure out for sure. Really quickly before we let you go, I just want to know, because a few days ago you were reporting about the possibility of at least 6 teams exploring outdoor stadium options. Has there been any pushback on that, or is that still a possibility?
I think, Jamie, it's probably unlikely, but it's cost. Like I just think it's purely teams saying what makes financial sense for us. And I think the more they've looked into the cost, they realize what an enormous challenge it is.
Right.
Although I don't think they've all given it up entirely.
Okay, very interesting.
Got to get Elliotte out there hosing down the outdoor backyard rink.
Exactly.
And be all good to go.
Thanks so much for the time again. And, who knows? Maybe we'll talk to you tomorrow or the next day. We'll talk to you soon, Elliotte.
As my wife always says to me, Jamie, the less you hear from me, the more you like me.
Oh, wow. We love you. Thanks, Elliotte.